All right, welcome to Jazz Forum here at the U of I. It's our second to the last forum for this year, so we thank you for tuning in. Today's a very special one. We have a wonderful guest artist that's going to do some talking and playing. And before we get to that, I just want to remind everybody, coming up, our Cranert concerts that are coming up, you do need a ticket to get into the studio theater. Faculty, students, everybody. They have to record how many people go into the room, so please go get your ticket at the will call window or just the regular ticket window when you're over there. I would suggest all of you that are doing sound checks for the upcoming concerts, the combo concert, and all the other ones next week, just go get the tickets when you go over there for sound check. Go to the ticket office there and get your ticket. It shouldn't cost you anything if you're a student or director. Just show them your little card if you're a faculty member, or the students, I think, just have the sticker on their ID. They might be right now. I don't know. It's a little early yet, maybe. I don't know. But
I remember last semester they would set aside specifically for us, but now we've got to have the sticker or whatever to pick them up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just go try. I mean, all I can say is go over there and try. If you just do it the day of your sound check, whatever your concert is, if you're playing in a concert, I would do that. That way you can just get it right ahead of the concert, and I know they'll be available then. Okay? If you just want to pick them up for other concerts early, I don't know. You'll have to check with the box office over there and see if they have them ready or not, if you're a student. Okay? That's the most I know about that. Okay? All right. Without further ado, and also one other thing. Juries. The jury sign-ups are up. Professor Hickey put those up on the 21st. They're outside of Smith Hall here on 25, posted on the door. Outside of 11 on the door, and outside of Professor Spencer's office, room 7 on the door. They're filling up, and there's only X amount of spots. We took a poll, and as I said, we have X amount of spots for juries. So if you did not give a recital of your own and you are studying applied lessons with any of the jazz faculty or TAs, and they require you to do a jury, you must sign up for a jury and make sure you're signed up. Whoever signed up by the 30th, then Professor Hickey requested, and I think it says it on the sheets, there will be no changes. There will be no add-ons or anything. So if somebody's late getting signed up, sorry, that's the way it goes. They've been up now since the 21st, and they'll be up all the way to the 30th, so make sure you get signed up. And faculty and TAs that have students, make sure the ones that you want to have do a jury or are required to do a jury, get signed up now. Okay? That'll be all next week. They'll have a chance to do that. So make sure you get signed up for that. And then I think that's it. Okay. So without further ado, today I want to introduce, sorry, Jim.
Just one real quick. Monday night, 7 o'clock, the gentlemen know they're playing with Champaign Central High School. Would be well worth checking out.
Yeah, go check them out. They sound great, always. They've been there many times, but yes, they're out on a tour. So that's their stop in Champaign. So if you want to go check it out, I think it's part of the Central High School Jazz Festival is what it's part of. So that's always good. And John Curry, who runs the program, they always does a great job bringing in different artists. And so this year it's the Note. They've been there several times before. But yeah, if you've never heard them, go check them out. It's a great band. Always good material. All right, without further ado, like I said, we have a very special guest artist. This young gentleman has a book out called Playing the Changes, and along with his wife, and taught jazz and started jazz, introduced jazz into the university system in South Africa, right?
That's right.
I believe. And that was back, when did you first get there?
I got there in 1983, and the jazz course started the following year.
Oh, wow. Okay. And then ran until like 2006, you said?
It's still running.
It's still going. Okay, great.
I'm just not there.
Okay. Well, without
I
further
stayed
ado.
there long enough that there were plenty of South Africans who could take my place.
Okay.
Which was the goal.
Okay, well, I'll just let him further talk about it. How about a wonderful hand for one of the sons of the iconic Dave Brubeck? This is Mr. Darius Brubeck. How about a hand for Darius?
You can sit down for a minute. I guess. That's good. Yeah. Okay. An hour is a short time to get through what I'd like to at least present, but here's what I'm aiming for. I'm going to talk about and illustrate a little bit of what distinguishes South African jazz, at least as it was when this century, in which I feel increasingly like a stranger. And how that really compares with what you're learning. You're learning the Western jazz canon, I presume. I'm also going to presume that you're really pretty advanced. So I'm not going to talk about basic stuff. I know it's effective attention getting if you do a lot of name dropping, so I'll quote my late friend Michael Brecker, who complained to me that there was no use having people bringing him in for a workshop to tell them what a D7 chord was. So like when someone comes from the outside, it's not to tell you what you have access to here at a high level. So I'm going to skip over a lot of things, and I know you'll keep up. I'm going to talk about improvising, starting from different points of view in terms of feel, what you're trying to achieve musically, and then, very quickly, we're going to do some playing together. If there's still time, although that would be amazing, I'll talk a bit about my own composing, what inspires me and what drives my composing process. So, okay, South African jazz is based, I'll think of some close analogies. I was thinking about this morning, is in our repertoire, American repertoire, we have basically blues, vamp tunes, which tend to be modal, but not necessarily. And let's say a sub-department of that would be like, mid-period big band music based on riffs, based on small melodic phrases that repeat without without changing, even though the background harmony changes. And that's kind of where South Africans started to not just imitate, but adapt American jazz. So, to make this point a little more concrete, okay, like. So you probably played this at fraternity dances. What was that?
Is it Cantaloupe Island?
Yeah, Cantaloupe Island. Okay, so that's an example of a tune based on a vamp. But Cantaloupe Island actually goes to a turnaround. So in that sense, it's more like a Western standard, is constrained by a fixed bar length. Now that is not typical of South African stuff. And a sort of funky vamp isn't either, but I'm dealing with this sort of on an abstract level. You can have something that is built on small repeated phrases, or you can have like a 32-bar tune kind of thing. South African, all right, we played this tune. Which was based on that figure. I was playing it a little too fast. I don't know. Trying to get to my point.
That's right, take your time.
But that's a piece by South African composer and pianist named Patrick Matshikiza. And that part is very South African because it is open. So it would be like Western instruments. And that is usually referred to as 1-4-5-1. So you can cycle that repeatedly, and a lot of tunes do that. A lot of early South African big band arrangements do that, and it's terrific. It's really effective. The idea that it's 1-4-5-1 though is how Western missionary music directors or pastors in churches interpreted it. It has a deeper connection to African music than just the fact that there's a choral tradition. It's not really 1-4-5-1, is it? It's 1-4-1-6-4. And so what happens? Bow music. So you have the energy of just something is up, a major second, above the tonic, it has to resolve. But that resolution is made more beautiful and interesting because there's more tension now, because there's a whole chord to resolve. And I'm using very Anglican missionary chords. That's completely fine. A South African soloist wouldn't find that difficult to deal with or restrictive. They can still use their blue notes, they can still use the whole chromatic scale, they can superimpose anything they want on it. The one thing that's kind of ugly and not to be used really is a 5-chord with a leading tone. Listen to how weak this sounds in comparison. I almost can't play it. Do you notice how bad that sounds? Okay, so even another issue about South African music, and this is something that was like really crazy to deal with when I was teaching at a university in a course that I established. I didn't have a boss, but I did have obligations in terms of conveying the knowledge I had gathered of Western music without attempting to replace the knowledge that they had of their music. And that's a tricky thing that requires it's a constant balancing act. Every university program starts with setting up a big band, and that's where I learned a lot about this problem, because everyone get there, unpack their instruments, and I'd say, okay, let's tune. Now, at first, that seemed like I was just demanding something arbitrary, like, you know, when you come to rehearsal, everyone must wear leather shoes. You know, what for? Then, you know, I gradually began to sort of break through that. But there are, I'm pausing here because I don't want to go beyond what is a reasonable amount of time to spend on this. But like a South African band is playing its own music, its own charts, really sounds killer. But if you were doing a jury, it's not in tune or out of tune, it's in tune for this kind of music, for this kind of feel. And the ethnomusicologist in me sort of wanted to accept that, and at the same time, the jazz professor and me wanted to make sure that if you hired them for a gig, you know, the parts would sound right, you know, so that was a constant balancing act. But if you heard like a terrific studio, you know, like Doc Severinson's band reading a South African chart, it would sound pretty lame because of all those consonances, very basic chords and so forth, but everyone kind of having their own tonal center makes it sound pretty hip in its way. And they are professional musicians and they can adjust. You know, they can also, you know, I had them playing, you know, some Dave Bardoon charts or some easier basic. We played basic straight ahead.
Yeah.
You know, so you teach versatility rather than punishing difference. And that's really, you know, punishing by low grades and that sort of thing. And that's how you establish a jazz program outside of America.
I had a question, Darius. How did, when you first got there,
Yeah.
and I'm assuming they just had a kind of a Western canon style music, you know, program, would you say? Or what was it based on when you first arrived and you wanted to try to introduce some different parts of jazz and starting the program? What did you start with, like course wise and just knowledge base wise?
Knowledge base wise, there was something I regard as nearly useless, which is Associated Board of Royal Schools of Examiners Theory, grade 6, which means you could write a 4-part chorale. Now think of one gig where you would be required to write a 4-part chorale, being very careful to avoid parallel fifths and octaves. You might be expected to know species counterpoint. Now that's what you need to do every day. A long line in half notes, accompanied by another long line in half notes. So that was kind of the official knowledge base because it was a colonial institution. Now, that isn't to say that the staff members I was dealing with were from that mindset, but there are, you know, institutional standards that had to be changed in order for a jazz course to exist. Okay. But outside of the institution, wow, was there music. Churches, man, the most incredible choral singing, instrumental music, you know, really cooking, all kinds of, you know, different local pop music. There was a very strong Zulu guitar tradition, which is sort of like, you know, flamenco, but African, you know, doing alternate tunings and stuff. So there was a lot going on. Speaking of going on, I should move.
That's okay.
Move forward with this. So anyway, I'm talking. So as an improviser, you come into the situation and you're thinking, well, I was, you know, I'm thinking about, you know, I've learned tunes, and my students, actually there were. Here's something that has to be explained, is actually there were a lot of jazz gigs around. And a lot of them were private functions. So like learning tunes was important. Learning tunes was how you made money and, you know, got ahead and got to play with increasingly better players. So I knew I wasn't there to just encourage people to do what they could already do. Uh, so, I had to explain things like modulation, transposition, pivot chords, guide tones, all the stuff you know. Okay, and I did. Those students got to be very good at those things. I'd like to, with Max and Adi, I'd like to play a tune though, which shows what happens. Let's do Mama Zala, just very briefly. What happens when you start with what's already there, and people get educated about what you can do with changes, with harmonic passages, because it's very easy to combine these styles. I think a lot of students came with the misconception that they were going to learn something different, just like when they went to high school, they had to learn, which was for their benefit, they had to learn to speak English and speak English in their classes, but it wasn't their own language. I was saying you can speak your language here, but let's also do this. So in Mama Zala, you have a very kind of typical choral-based opening, and then for the solos, it's actually it's actually the name of the composer is Zim Awana. It's kind of what Zim derived from being able to play confirmation. You know confirmation. Yeah, that's so. improvising is based on all kinds of things. There's so many sources you draw in, from modeling yourself on different great improvisers, musical experimentation, or just from trying out concepts. I think some of you are probably at a stage in life where you're torturing yourselves with triad pairs, transpositions of Locrian, that kind of thing. You've got to try these things, and sometimes when they happen for you, they open up a whole world, and sometimes you just wonder when you can stop practicing. But I'll show you something. Got a little wrist thing happening here, but coming from a completely different thing, how the South African thing combined with the bebop thing, just coming from a different point of view. Let's suppose you're coming like from just by a little change of feel, you can go from, a kind of serious classical, moody sort of thing to jazz, and be true to both. You're not making fun of one thing or another. You're hybridizing. Wasn't perfect, but it was convincing enough because of the intention behind it, and the feel is a wonderful word for all the things that are really important in our playing, but are very hard to define. The best you could do in a kind of strict musicological context is say micro-rhythmic adjustments. You know, the pulse, the measurable distance between pulses might be the same, but when you really magnify it, say you're working in Pro Tools, you'll find that jazz musicians are very adept, depending on whether they're playing fusion or swing style or odd meters or something, at making those adjustments, and they have an emotional impact. That's the point. That's what makes things happen. I'd like to. Okay, let's get some students playing or joining us. Well, Max maybe should anchor this. Well, I want to go into like one of my own compositions that we used Earthrise. And so this is an example of something that is vamp based. It's modal. And so it's like the Western thing of having a form, and it's arranged to a slight extent, meaning that there's a routine. There's something that happens after the solos that doesn't occur anywhere else in the piece, and that's a neat trick for small ensemble arranging. If you look at, I know at university level, Horace's charts are very popular, and Horace Silver, and that's why, because they're special moments that happen, but it's not like you have to have your head down, and it's not like you're reading most of the time, but there are still prearranged things. Earthrise was inspired by a poster I saw in 1973 of the moon coming over the horizon. Of the Earth coming over the horizon of the moon, and I said this to the audience last night too. Some of my compositions are inspired by visual things, and there are other things that can trigger. Well, I think most music is inspired by already existing music, right? It's how we work and what we build on. But something makes you want to assemble the elements that are pre-existing in a particular way, and that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about creating out of nothing. I don't think that really exists. But this. Oh, who plays piano?
I play piano. But
Yeah.
you're trying to have other piano players play.
Yeah, because the score is taped together
Come up.
and everything. I'll get it started for you. No, come here. Come here. So, and then I'll just get up and you can solo.
I can hold the paper. anything at all, I mean, feel free to ask away. The book. What is the primary gist of the book? Just so everybody knows.
Okay, it's called Playing the Changes, Jazz at an African University and on the Road. And
Did you tour at all with any of your students or do some things?
Oh, yes.
Oh, beautiful.
Oh, yes.
Excellent.
That was quite a few years later, I discovered that what I'd been doing has a name. It's called practice-based pedagogy.
There you go. Excellent.
You've all heard of that?
I'm a believer.
I hadn't, but I was doing it anyway.
Yeah.
And yes, the Jazzanians
Ah,
came to Detroit in 1988.
oh, beautiful. For the
And
Detroit Festival? Was
The
that-
no,
we-
you know, you might even be too young for this. But,
I don't know.
I don't know. It's on the edge. 1988 was the last NAJE
Yes.
conference and the first IAJE conference. National Association of Jazz Educators became the International Association for Jazz Education. And so the book talks about I put together a university supergroup of, just the best. And we got funding. This was at a time of tremendous turmoil and even violence in South Africa. You could say that about any time before 1994, actually. So it was really questionable. Should we do this? Would it be acceptable? And what it did is it marked a turning point because when Americans wouldn't allow South African athletes to compete because of the apartheid system, it was a sanction. The question of, well, should a student band from a university be subject to the same kind of thing? Well, it turned out that no, we were the Black Caucus in the U.S. Congress had a debate about it, led by Congressman John Conyers, who was a very big supporter of jazz, and so we came to that. We already had a strong following in South Africa, but being accepted now, and this is maybe something that will have parallels in your future because we're moving into an era of authoritarian oppression in this country. We gained leverage by being accepted in the outside world to the extent that the university then saw the jazz program as their flagship. That became their identity, their calling card. No one wanted to play rugby with a bunch of white South Africans, but a multiracial jazz band and multicultural. I mean, it wasn't just a question of black and white. It was, there were many nationalities,
Sure.
Within that mix.
Jazz has kind of had a history of that long
Yeah.
before that too.
Right. And the book really is about how jazz, and maybe more broadly, to be more broad-minded, culture, music, education generally can influence events way out of proportion to what you think the impact may be. I had a small big band of 9 musicians. That meant that after we returned, and this sounds like a big claim to make, I'm not a boaster, but it's just true. After that, every tertiary institution in South Africa wanted to have a jazz course
Jazz course, sure.
so that they could go on the road, so that they could compete with each other, cooperate with each other. To this day, there's a national youth jazz festival in South Africa that's quite a big thing, even though there's a South African SAJE that has an international conference and convention every year.
Cool.
And the book largely is about this, but it's also a memoir of the time that my wife, Catherine, who was the co-author, and I spent in South Africa. So we were in the changes, we were playing the changes, we were making the changes. So
Yeah, the metaphor for it.
yeah, the metaphor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Anybody else? Questions? Yes, Matt.
Yeah. So you mentioned that in 19 you said it was 1988 when you took
Yeah.
ensemble to IAJE. That at that time it was already multiracial and multicultural. I'm curious how you achieved that working within what I have no doubt was very rigidly segmented and hierarchical sort of racist policy that was apartheid. That seems like a sort of an anomalous thing to be able to do that at an institution in South Africa before 1994.
Yeah, well, that was the point.
Catherine and I worked there. Thank you for.
How did you do that? How did you get the leverage? How did you negotiate that kind of thing?
A lot of the book describes the process,
I see.
and
I'll read the book.
yeah, read the book, but I'm not going to leave you just with read the book. I'll say that we had a lot of allies. We created a sense of, now this isn't a rule for life, but how we navigated things then was we felt that persuasion was better than confrontation, but we never backed down on anything. So
There you go.
that's that is sort of overall what it meant. So in order to have black students on campus who were not qualified because their high school education didn't qualify them, the university was very reluctant to say it was a white university, but it was de facto pretty nearly that, because how could a black person subject to a separate, completely segregated high school background, pass exams, all in English, no concession to language differences, and all that. How could they get in? Well, my way was to say, if someone wants to come to my class, just come. I didn't say black people come. I just said it's open. Come in.
I did a very similar thing when I started the program here 24
Yeah.
years ago. Because I had the question, believe it or not, even here, what is jazz? Why have jazz?
Yeah.
And I said, well, the classes and the ensembles are open to everybody. I
Yeah.
could care less whether you're from Mars or where you're from or what you do. Come and show up and play, and I still feel that way. And there's a perfect case in point.
Yeah.
Internationally, yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So if you have that kind of openness, but gee, I didn't know I'd be delivering a sermon, but
No, that's good.
there's a difference between just being open and being open with a purpose. I had an agenda, what I wanted to do. I wanted to establish jazz education as an official subject, and the implications beyond that were that students who were studying official subjects could apply for scholarships. They could get student housing. They could be subsidized. They could be, they could make use of the library, et cetera, et cetera. A campus isn't, you can open the doors only so much before, there are serious reasons why, people should be identifiable as students. So we worked that kind of retrogressively. We had unqualified students appear at exams that were scheduled anyway for everybody, and play so well that the examiners could be persuaded, well, this person deserves credit for what they, what they did.
Sure.
And eventually, we built our enrollment that way. I'm probably giving you a longer answer than
No,
you
I
want.
actually would love as much answer as you can give, but we're
Yeah.
running out of time. So.
Any last things you want to say, Darius? It was certainly a pleasure. How about another hand for Darius? Any closing things?
Um,
Wanna leave us with? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I want to make sure you got everything in you wanted to.
Yeah, maybe one more thing, and it could be just something to discuss amongst yourselves, because I think in the process of acquiring the skills and the knowledge that I take very seriously. I'm not saying, oh, just play, man. But I am saying that you have to think about what's music for? What can you do with music? You should compose and play, or at least be moving toward a state where you are composing or playing with intention. Intention towards an audience, or intention towards your society, or maybe, dare I say, developing your own spirituality. Music can serve many purposes. It doesn't mean that it's invalid not to serve a purpose, but if it's powered by reaching for something beyond music, I think you'll find everything that you do in music becomes more relevant, and you'll be developing strong networks, a sense of community with other musicians. And this doesn't have to be talked about. I'm talking about it as a final word, but it's just something to feel and to respect that feeling and to recognize that in other musicians.
Beautiful. How about a hand? Great.